Morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Tseng. I'm the co-founder and president of a company called Shield AI. It's a 10-year-old, going on $10 billion organization that has spent the last decade committed to the mission of protecting service members and civilians by building the world's most advanced autonomous systems. That was a short video summarizing Shield AI's work over the last 10 years, featuring everything from our first autonomous quadcopter to AI-flown jets, to our vertical takeoff and landing reconnaissance aircraft that's deployed in Ukraine, to our next generation vertical takeoff and landing strike aircraft called XBAT. That video fires me up, not just because I think the technologies are badass, but because it reminds me of the power of technology, of innovation, to make a tremendous and positive impact on the world. First, I should say that I am honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me and having me up here as a 2006 University of Florida graduate. It's good to be back in the state of Florida. I'm also an engineer, so it's terrific to be up in front of some of the best and brightest in aerospace and defense. When the organizers invited me to talk today, they said I could talk about anything, so I went through my mental checklist of things that I'm passionate about. Florida football, the 2026 midterms. Neither of those felt appropriate, so I thought I would talk about innovation and its impact in aerospace and defense. Leading Shield AI as its founder and CEO for the first 10 years, I got to see the transformative impact of AI and advanced aircraft, of technology and innovation when deployed in the real world and deployed at scale. Lives saved, the world made safer, and it showed me not only what could be done with technologies, but the tremendous additional opportunities for innovation and impact in this sector. When we started the company in 2015, people often asked me, what would success be? And the first thing I said was mission impact. We would measure our success based on lives saved, people brought home safely to their families, wars averted. And second, whether or not we inspired others to pursue a similar and noble mission. The world is too big for one person or one team to solve all the problems, and so the best thing that we could do was multiply the number of people that cared about the mission of aerospace and defense or cared about the mission of national security. How do you do that? Well, there are many tactics for inspiration. Some of them good, some of them ineffective. Sometimes I'm effective, sometimes I'm not. We'll see how it goes today. You might nod off, fall asleep. If you do, I'm just going to yell, woo, again, wake you back up and force you to listen. But here we go. I'm going to try. In my job, I'm lucky to meet many successful and interesting founders. In the last week by itself, I met two engineers that had started companies in aerospace and defense, both today worth well over $1 billion. And every time I meet a great CEO, founder, or engineer, one of the things that I love to do is ask them about their founding story. These stories are always new, they're always different, they're always surprising, and I find them inspirational. They inspire me to try new things, to think differently, to try harder. And so I thought today, amongst the many technical talks that you're going to get, instead of giving you another technical talk, I thought I would share the founding story of Shield AI with all of you. And my hope is that you leave this conference not just with more knowledge about what the state of the art is, which of course I know you can get through the many and awesome technical sessions that are available here, but you leave with a little bit of inspiration and maybe a few practical lessons from our experience so that you can go back to your job, your lab, or your startup and be a little more fired up, a little more empowered to make a positive impact on the world. So, our story started with me searching for fire in the belly. Growing up, my parents had a couple messages for me. They were pretty easy to remember because they were very redundant. It was work hard, and work hard. So I began to pride myself on working hard, and it sort of became my MO. No matter what I was doing, whether it was early childhood sports, whether it was my academics or my professional career, I prided myself in always being the hardest person in the room. And if somebody was smarter than me, if they were stronger than me, I was just going to work harder. And I started and sold a company to Qualcomm pretty early in my career, and I had been working at Qualcomm for 4 years, and around that time I started to lose that fire in the belly. And in a career and a life defined by my parents' simple message, I felt like I was starting to break a sweat. And I didn't know how I was going to continue to keep up the pace if I didn't have a passion for what I was doing. And as somebody who defined themselves as somebody that could work really hard, an extinguishing flame became a pretty concerning thing. So I decided to take time off and figure out what it was that motivated me. Long story short, I decided that if I could find the intersection of 3 things, I'd have that fire in the belly not for the next 5 years, but for the next 50. And those 3 things were: 1, the opportunity to contribute to a noble mission; 2, the opportunity to work with extraordinary people; and 3, a chance to define the possible. And so I set about looking for the intersection of these 3 things. That's my brother. He's a Navy SEAL. He's super smart. He's a great leader. I also consider him one of the most obnoxious people on the planet. Around the time I was looking for the intersection of these 3 things, my brother was getting out of the SEAL teams. He's a smart guy. He was getting ready to do his interviews at Harvard Business School. And we're very competitive. Does anybody here have siblings that you're competitive, and are you competitive with your siblings? Hell yeah, you're better than your siblings. He asked me if I could help him prepare for his business school interviews. And so this is a very weird request because we're so competitive with each other. So of course, I agreed. First, I called up my mom and I said, "Hey mom, guess what? I'm helping Brandon get ready for his business school interviews." She said, "Wow, Ryan, you're such a great big brother." I said, "I know. Thanks, Mom." And then a couple days later, I sat down with my brother, and we just started to go through this process. And I asked him the very simple and standard question that gets asked in a lot of job interviews, and certainly in interviews for grad school, which is, what's the most challenging circumstance you have faced in life, and what did you do about it? And again, because he's my brother and we're very competitive, I just assumed whatever he was about to tell me was going to be super lame. But despite us being very close and me just being very intimately familiar with his life, he shared a story that I had never heard before. It was a story of service and sacrifice on behalf of other people, on behalf of people that couldn't stand up for themselves, and it brought me to tears. And if I ever put myself in the moment where I hear that story, I get choked up. And I thought to myself, what an amazing person, what an incredible mission. At the end of the interview, I encouraged him to think about what he wanted to do next in life, because if you go to business school, turns out you need a plan pretty early on when you get there. And so he went off and started to think about it, and he came back several weeks later, and he said, "I want to bring the best of what's going on in the autonomous driving sector to the mission of protecting service members and civilians." And I thought to myself, that's an amazing mission. It's a stupid business. Good luck. Have fun. And the alignment of business strength with a mission is important because it takes resources to make impact. Now, I don't know if you know very many SEALs, or my brother, but SEALs are known for being very persistent people, and my brother is no exception. And he said, "What do I need to show you?" And I said, "Well, you should go talk to 50 people that you don't know, learn about the scale of the problem, and see what else is being done about it." And he said, "Fine, I'll do it, but I want you to come with me." I happened to not really be doing anything at the time because I had just quit my job at Qualcomm, so I agreed to go with him. And as I joined him in these conversations, I was shocked by the scale of the problem and just how little was being done about it. In 2015, technology companies in Silicon Valley had turned their back on the Defense Department. It was a deeply unpopular thing to do, to build technologies that were going to go to war, that were going to service members. And the mission that my brother had had killed more service members, which was clearing buildings of threats, had killed more service members and civilians than any other mission type in the preceding 20 years, and nobody was doing anything about it. So in 2015, we started Shield AI. That's a picture of Brandon, me, and our third co-founder, Andrew Ryder, week 1. We were full of hope, optimism, and totally oblivious to all the pain and suffering that was going to lay ahead of us. And if you fast forward to today, we are a global business with 1,400 teammates. As I said, 5 going on $10 billion organization, and I think have had a track record of delivering mission impact and defining the possible. And I'll come back to our story in a second, but just for context, I thought I would share some of the things that our company has done over the last decade. In 2018, we were the first team, the first company in the world to successfully deploy an AI pilot in combat with US Special Operations Command. It was an autonomous quadcopter that could go into buildings ahead of forces to clear them of threats, to find house-borne IEDs, to find barricaded shooters, and I'm tremendously proud of the impact that this product has made. This is a text message with one of our customers, and the line at the end, "You should know that Nova saved many lives in combat." In 2020, we were the first company in the world to successfully operationalize a tail-sitting aircraft. You all are engineers. Tail-sitters are a pretty unique architecture. They have unmatched payload mass fraction and endurance for their form factor. And in 2024, this aircraft would go on to be the only, and still today, the only effective long-range reconnaissance and targeting asset that's effective in the war in Ukraine, because uniquely, it's able to fly very long-range, very high-endurance sorties without the use of GPS. In 2023, we're the first company in the world to fly a combat aircraft with an AI pilot, and not only did we fly an F-16 with an AI pilot, we flew an AI pilot in a dogfight against a weapons school pilot from the United States Air Force, executing the first in history AI versus human dogfight and live flight. For that work, our team was one of 4 finalists for the Collier Trophy for the highest achievement in aerospace and astronautics in the preceding year. And then in 2025, 10 years after we snapped that picture of us holding a quadcopter, which, for the record, was totally broken and not working at all, despite the smiles on our face, we announced XBAT, a 23,000-pound vertical takeoff and landing, tail-sitting strike fighter powered by the GE F-110 afterburning jet engine with axisymmetric thrust vectoring for its tail-sitting takeoff and landing. And because I think this product is super badass, I'm also going to show a video of it, and it'll be sort of relevant to what I'm going to say later, but mostly I just think it's badass, so I'm going to play the video. We think the XBAT is going to transform military aviation forever. Vertical takeoff and landing tactical aircraft, I think, are as significant as the advent of stealth. The fundamental problem faced by US forces or European or Asian forces around the world is that adversaries have developed deep magazines of long-range strike weapons that puts every airfield in the world within their weapon engagement zone. There are tremendous vulnerabilities to fixed infrastructure by forces globally. Air power is the only way to deter war. It is the only way to win war. And giving our forces and allies the ability to launch and land from anywhere in the world is fundamentally transformative. It is the only way we will be able to project air power in a world where you are operating or living in your adversary's weapon engagement zone. Okay. Eisenhower said security and stability are the foundation of human achievement. And I believe deeply in the power of technology and innovation to contribute to that foundation. I believe that the mission of protecting service members and civilians deserves one of the great technology companies in the world dedicated to that mission. And I define great by being one of the largest companies in the world. So you've got NVIDIA out there at $5 trillion, Google around $5 trillion, huge organizations committed to their missions. But when you look at the mission of security, stability, the foundation of human achievement, there's no company even close to the scale of those technology giants. And at Shield AI, we aspire to build a company committed to our mission, grounded in our values, with the resources only afforded to the greatest technology companies in the world. So when I said earlier that we're a $5 billion going on $10 billion organization after 10 years, that might sound like a lot, but it's really just early innings. We're 1/500th the size of the great technology companies of today. We have a long way left to run. And so as I share the lessons from my experience, these are the lessons learned so far. And one of the exciting things for me is that there's so much left to learn in our journey ahead. But here are the 5 that stand out to me. Number 1, mission matters. A great team is most fundamentally built on its purpose. And that mission matters not just because it's necessary to rally everybody around it. The mission matters because it will be your source of inspiration, your source of energy when the going inevitably gets tough. I believe deeply in our mission. No matter how terrible things are in some day, some month, or some year, I wake up every day absolutely believing that our work matters, and I'm excited and humbled to contribute to the mission every single day. I said earlier, or maybe I didn't say earlier, when people ask me, what are you most proud of at Shield AI? A lot of times the things they rattle off are the technologies, and really cool, like flying around jets with AI, which is awesome. But what I tell them is the thing that has moved me most, the thing that has inspired me most, has been the mission impact. The only times I've ever been brought to tears with joy or pride have been the moments that I've learned that we brought people home safely to their families. I very specifically remember the first text message I got. This wasn't the first one, where a special operator came home safely to their family because their autonomous quadcopter found a houseborne IED in a building that they were fixing to go into. So, the mission matters. Pick something that will inspire you to work hard, to show up every day and do your best, because changing the world is hard and you have to believe in what you're doing. 2, know your values. I say that like the 1 and 1A of a great team is knowing your mission and knowing how you're going to pursue that mission. What are the values that guide you through that journey? When you face those hard choices, how do you want your team to respond? How are you going to respond? At Shield AI, our values are do it on or dictates. Always be the people that are going to do the right thing, no matter how hard it is. Live as servant leaders. We're here for the mission. We're here for the team, before ourselves. And pursue excellence, where we define excellence as the best in the world. This picture, and you'd have to know what I look like normally for this to be, very significant. But this picture was taken around a time where I had to make a really hard decision. And it was guided by our values. Number one, do it on our dictates. This was in 2020. This is me with my son. I have 3 kids. I love them very much. And I had lost about 20 pounds. Fun fact about Ryan, when Ryan gets stressed, he loses a lot of weight. And I was about 20 pounds down in this picture around the time I had to make a decision. The way that I ran Shield AI was very aggressively. When you're trying to do something innovative, you got to push hard. And basically, every step of our first 4 years was like based on a success-based plan. If something didn't go right, we were effed. We had to hit our technical milestones. We had to hit our program milestones. We had to hit our financial milestones. And if we didn't, we were out of money. And around this time, I think there were around 200 people that had poured their life into building Shield AI. And we needed to raise our Series C financing or we were going to be out of money. And what had been a recurring pattern for Shield at the time, because defense was so unpopular, we got down to the wire with basically a lot of no's and one investor that was willing to do the Series C check. That refers to like a sequential financing round, if you guys aren't familiar. And I don't know if anybody here has raised money, but it works something like this. You put together your business plan and your pro forma financial forecast, like what's going to happen in the future, and over the period of about 6 to 9 months, you go talk to a whole bunch of people, and if you're really lucky and you do a good job, somebody will be like, all right, I believe in you, I'll give you a term sheet, and then I will invest in your company. And we got a term sheet from like the last investor that we knew that was going to write a check into the company. Now, because it's very hard to forecast the performance of a company that's very new, things can change during the span of 6 to 9 months. And a few days before we closed the transaction, I started to doubt the financial forecast that we put together. I believed them deeply when I wrote them and I presented them to the investors enthusiastically, but when they were going to wire the money, I started to doubt whether or not we could achieve those financial forecasts. And I talked to Brandon and Andrew, who you saw pictured earlier, and I said, we have to tell these investors before we write the check that I have serious doubts about this financial forecast. And I knew that if they backed out, Shield AI was a dead company. But honor dictated that I make the phone call. So I called up the investor, and I said, look, very excited about the possibility of you investing in the organization. I think we're doing great things. But I needed to tell you the financial forecast that I provided you 9 months ago, I have serious questions about whether or not we can achieve it. And then we walked through some of the details of my thinking, and he said, Ryan, I can't believe we're having this phone call. I have been investing for a long time, but never in my career has a CEO ever called me right before closing to tell me that they didn't believe their financial forecast. It's like, I get these calls all the time after we make the investment, but never before. And I was like, oh, well, this is like, he loves me. This is great. Maybe the world isn't over. And they said, but by the way, we won't be able to invest. And I wanted to like puke my brains out right then and there, because after 4 years of crushing like effort and so many people and customers putting their faith in us, I was then convinced it was the end of the road. Somehow, and I probably like blacked out for a period of like several months, we figured it out, and we obviously didn't disappear. But the lesson was, know your values, know who you are, and do the right thing, even when it's the hard thing. Do it on our dictates. Grit and hard work. Turns out you'll spend a lot of your life relearning lessons that your parents told you when you were like 5. So this is my journey to like put some meaning behind some of the lessons that my parents provided me, which is to work hard. When we started Shield AI, like I said, defense was very unpopular. My job when that founding trio was to raise the money, because I had started and successfully sold a company to Qualcomm previously, and so I thought raising money was going to be a very straightforward thing. Turns out it wasn't. Like I said, defense was super unpopular at the time. Went through the whole list of investors. This is before the Series C story. This is like right in the earlier days. Got no's from everybody, but eventually got an offer for a $5 million term sheet, but it came with a condition, that we change the mission of the company. It could not be about protecting service members and civilians. We had to do something in the consumer market or the industrial market. They liked the team. They liked the technology. They didn't like the market. And I remember the conversation with Brandon and Andrew, and I said, look, we have no options for money. This is the last one. And Andrew said, I would rather go out of business trying to make mission impact than take this money. So we said no. And then we worked like crazy for the next year to try to show that we were a company and a team worth backing and that this was a mission worth backing. And it got really tough because we got really low on money. I remember Andrew Ryder bought a LiDAR. You guys probably know what that is because of the audience. It's like a $3,000 thing that we wanted to put on a quadcopter, and he wanted to cut the cable to the LiDAR. I was like, Andrew, that's $3,000. We can't return this if you cut the cable. He's like, well, the quadcopter's not going to fly because the cable's too heavy, so we have to cut it. And it was like a really big moment in the company when he was going to cut the cord to the LiDAR so the quadcopter could actually fly. Got all the way to the point where the trips to San Francisco, I couldn't afford to fly anymore. So this is me taking a megabus from San Diego to San Francisco because the cost of the plane ticket was just going to be backbreaking, and it wasn't something that I could stomach paying for again. That picture in the bottom right is me sitting in the back of the bus on my way to San Francisco in what was our last shot to maybe get money from an investor. And then me smiling is a selfie that I sent to Brandon and Andrew after the meeting. I had just missed my megabus back to San Diego, but I was happy because we had been told by the investor that they would write us an $800,000 check and they would let us stay focused on the mission of protecting service members and civilians. So grit, hard work, matters. Lesson 4, 10x. This is less personal and more about market mechanics and engineering. A lot of engineers fall in the trap of thinking it's all about the technology, and that if you have the best technology, you're going to win. What a lot of people forget is that the way something is usually for a lot of additional reasons in addition to the technology. And so if you build something that's 10% better, 50% better, 2 times better, because of the everything else required to make something successful, that 2x better technology across the value chain, or what actually matters, ends up looking like a 10% advantage. And the problem, whether you're starting your own company or you are within a large organization trying to make impact, or in a lab, is that 10% advantage is insufficient to offset, and it's hard to admit, but it's insufficient to offset your own incompetence on the everything else. You need a tremendous technical advantage to protect yourself from your own idiocy and the many other things that go into making something successful. Shield AI pursued AI pilots. I believe those are the only path to go from a deployed number of systems that is 10, 100, 1,000 times greater than it is today, which I think is necessary for the future of war. And so by pursuing this thing, my own limitations became less of an issue as we built the organization. XBAT is a new approach to air power that creates survivability by creating thousands of times more launch points than would be available from fixed infrastructure. As we go through our journeys, and as engineers seeking to change the world, I encourage you to look for the 10x, because those are the things that are really going to change the world. Those are the things that are going to make it to the field. And finally, lesson 5, believe in yourself, believe in your teammates. This is a picture of some of the many people at SHIELD. I think they're the most incredible and inspirational team on the planet. In the green room, we were talking about some of the work that we're doing in Ukraine, and SHIELD is known as sort of the only defense tech company that's having continued success in the war in Ukraine. And a big reason for that is some of our best engineers have decided to move to Ukraine. We have a laboratory that is literally underground where they're able to take lessons from the battlefield, where they'll forward deploy all the way to the forward line of troops and come back, take lessons learned, and iterate on the products. It is humbling to be in the company of people that are not only great engineers, but have the courage to pick up their life and go sit themselves in one of the most dangerous environments on the planet because they believe that only they can make a difference. Belief in yourself, belief in your team is super important. When I started my first company that I sold to Qualcomm, I learned a lesson about belief in self. I had a chance encounter with an investor. I remember pitching how wireless charging was going to change the world, and he asked me at the end of it, how big of a company are you going to build? And I proudly said, I'm going to build a $150 million company. He gave me his card and said, call me when you decide to think big. So my first thought was, F you. And then but then I decided to reflect on why he said that to me. I was like, 150 million, like this guy is crazy. Like, what a crazy ambition to build a $150 million organization and be able to do this technology. But I knew myself at the time that there were organizations that had been started by people that were worth hundreds of billions of dollars, that had massive impact on the world. And what I realized was that it was my own thinking limiting myself. I wrote 150 million because I didn't believe that I could build a $10 billion company, a $100 billion company, a $1 trillion company. And so I resolved in that moment to never be the person that was going to limit what I could achieve. Belief in self. And so when we started Shield AI, and I said it earlier, it started from the foundation of we are going to make mission impact, we're going to protect service members and civilians, we're going to do it at tremendous scale, and the way that we're going to do that is by building a defining technology company of this organization. If you believe in yourself, you can do anything. If you believe in your teams and you give them that self-belief, you and your teams can do anything. There's another Navy SEAL on our team. His name is Admiral Bob Harward. He's a brilliant person. And he has this thing that he likes to say, but I know he believes it, which is, I can do anything. And I love that phrase. That belief in self is so important. I can do anything. You can do anything if you believe in yourself. So, to wrap it up, I know this is a technology conference. This was not a technology talk, but I try to be different. So I talked about something else. Hopefully, our story inspired you to think differently, to try something new, to make impact, and remember, find your purpose, know your values, be tough, think big, believe in yourself, go change the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Yeah, of course.
Outstanding presentation.
Thank you.
We'll take a few moments here to go through some questions and answers from the audience, if we could. I have several questions for you, and I'll start off with this one. Can you speak to how your organization has approached roll control during takeoff and landing on the XBAT, which appears to operate with a single centerline thrust vector controlled engine?
It is with bleed air. Bleed air from the engine goes to roll control jets at the wingtips.
Awesome. Next up here, what is the greatest challenge you faced in Shield AI, and how did you tackle it?
I went over a couple of those. The many instances of almost disappearing were the most challenging moments, I would say. The way that I tackled it was just thinking about the mission and, frankly, being surrounded by extraordinary people that in the same way that I encourage people to believe in themselves, they encourage me to believe in myself.
How did you find and inspire those employees, those engineers and researchers that you needed to be successful?
I think that if you can speak clearly, with conviction about the purpose of what you're trying to do, that's how you attract the best and brightest people in the world. There's no shortage of things that engineers there's infinite discovery space. There's infinite problem-solving space. And it's hard to, in the same way it was for me, to find the intersection of things that mattered, which in my case was the opportunity to contribute to a noble mission, work with extraordinary people, and define the possible. And I think if you can, people will say it in different ways, but I think a lot of people are looking for the intersection of those three things, and if you can offer that to people, you'll attract great talent.
So you would summarize that as the value proposition for your engineering community then?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. How do your teams ensure that the usage of lethal force by autonomous systems is done in an ethical manner with effective guardrails?
So I think that, first, just from an architectural perspective, there's a lot of design assurance built in, and making sure that humans are in ultimate control of the decision making. Additionally, I think we have brilliant partners in the Department of War. I don't think anybody has thought more about the ethical use of lethal force in the world, probably in history, than the Department of War. A lot of very smart, thoughtful people develop rules of engagement. They develop policies, they develop laws. And as the technologists, I think it's our obligation to build the architecture that gives them confidence that a system is going to do what it's supposed to do. But then we get to work with partners that are just brilliant thinkers on the subject. And I will note, and I think a lot of people have probably heard this before, autonomous systems have been used through history. And you can just, like a landmine, that's like a very long mission duration autonomous system that is very indiscriminate. I'd say the trend of technology, even as we get to autonomous systems, which people, I think rightly have circumspection about, but they are infinitely more precise, infinitely more predictable than autonomous systems of yesterday.
We've heard quite a bit, obviously, earlier this morning from Andril and now Shield AI about CCA and collaborative combat aircraft and their role in the future. How do you see that mission developing as we look towards future conflict?
I think that collaborative combat aircraft will play a huge role in the future of air power. You'll hear a lot of people talk about affordable mass, lethality, survivability, supportability. CCAs increase lethality while improving survivability, and those are two of the most important dimensions in warfighting, because they give pilots standoff, they give them time to think, to read, react more effectively. Mm-hmm. Some people say there will be 4 CCAs for every combat aircraft. Some people are saying 10. I don't know what the ratio will be ultimately, but I think that CCAs will have a tremendous impact on the future of air power.
Indeed. You had mentioned in your presentation your work in the Ukraine, working specifically to test and validate new processes and procedures. And we discussed in the green room what the challenges are with respect to that. Why do you think more companies are not going to Ukraine and testing and operating there, as we mentioned?
I think you need a courageous culture, and in addition to the technical excellence. One of the most remarkable things about Shield AI, from my perspective, has been the intersection of communities. My brother was a Navy SEAL, I was an engineer, and I think we've got a very unique blend of perspectives and experiences and a culture that, has the courage of special operators with the creativity and, of some of the best engineers in the world. And I think it's about the people. I think that you just need the right people that believe enough in the mission and can go to those areas and close those feedback loops. American companies have been treating Ukraine as an open loop thing, and as engineers, you know how open loop systems tend to pan out, which is not good. If you're just sending things over to Ukraine, but you don't have any way to actually understand what's happening, you're not going to converge to a solution. Shield AI is the only defense tech company that has a full-time presence in Ukraine. We have labs, we have operators, we have people operating all the way from the slot back to our underground laboratories, and that's enabled us to close the feedback loop. That's enabled us to be effective.
As an engineering question, if I could, Ryan, rapid prototyping and conformity to a known configuration are often in opposition. How do you manage these challenges while reaching speed to ramp?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the fundamental challenges facing the sector and the competitiveness of American aerospace, which I think is changing, is an obsession with process and procedure ahead of outcomes. Configuration control is extremely important, and it needs to remain central to what we do. But there is a risk rheostat, right, between speed that you basically you can adjust the amount of risk that you're taking. And if you go to Ukraine, those systems have almost no configuration control. Not the ones we send over, those have some just because we have our processes set up, but the reason that they've been able to iterate so quickly is because they're operating in extremis, and they just need to figure out what works, and they immediately make changes. In other places, there's extreme risk aversion, and that it's just impossible to make change. The way that we manage it is by investing significantly in software tooling and in infrastructure to enable high rates of change while also delivering configuration control and assurance that things work. I think one of the hardest problems in autonomy and AI for aviation is that you need to operate in this world of high assurance so you can get airworthiness and weapon certification, but you also need to achieve extremely high performance with software. And AI involves tremendous amounts of software, far more than is ever traditionally written in the world of aviation. And so the question becomes, like this person is asking, how do you sit at the intersection of high performance and high assurance while being able to iterate quickly? And as an organization, we just spend an insane amount of time building the processes and infrastructure that enables us to sit at the intersection of those three things.
We've mentioned before how fast Shield AI has gone from 3 guys in a selfie to a multinational company. That's a very impressive thing. So how would you answer here? How can startups in aerospace compete effectively against large incumbent aerospace primes?
Great question. I'd sort of just point back to the 5 things that I said. You gotta be on a mission. You gotta be guided by good values. You've got to have. Well, here's a new one. In addition to what I said, the limiting factor in achievement is a combination of talent and talent density. You have to find the very best people in the world to join you. Back to believing in yourself, you need to believe that no matter what you do, you deserve the best teammates in the world, and you need to get as many of those people together in one place focused on a very specific problem, and that will enable you to achieve the 10x necessary to be competitive when everything else matters so much.
So AIAA is a collection of 33,000 aerospace engineers, researchers, and scientists, running from young professionals all the way up through senior fellows. If you were to give them one piece of advice from your experience working in the industry, what would it be?
It's like, how deep can I go? I've gotten to 6, now 7. Gosh, I don't know. I'll just go back to the last one, which is just believe in yourself. You can do anything.
Awesome advice. Again, thank you very much, Ryan. Sincerely appreciate it, and thank you all for participating today.
All right, thank you.
The threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.